Next, we have a very special guest, the brother of Julian Assange. His name is Gabriel Shipton. I'm sure you've all heard what he is working on right now, that is freeing his brother. He's also a professional film producer. I first heard his story and heard him speak on the Jimmy Dore show. It was a very interesting conversation. And I'm sure everyone knows the story of Julian Assange, who has been facing, legal battles, for over 13 years, and 5 years ago was arrested for what, you might ask? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. Those in the government will tell you Julian Assange was arrested for this, that, and the other. They'll try to make it seem like he was arrested and has been held and tortured at Belmarsh prison for colluding with the Russians, which is a bunch of lies. They'll tell you that he's in Belmarsh and facing extradition to the U.S. because he released sensitive information. No. The truth of the matter, as you all know, is Julian Assange is being held in prison and he's being tortured because he told the truth about the warmongers. He told the truth about the security state. He told the truth about those in power. So, Gabriel Shipton, thank you so much for joining me on the Mother of All Talk Shows. I hope you're doing well. And I understand. Yes, of course. I understand that there is a big decision that the High Court is set to rule on Monday. Could you give us an update about the state of your brother's case?
Well, yeah, coming up on Monday, on the 20th of May, there will be a hearing in the Royal Courts of Justice in London. And that is another do or die hearing for Julian. If the judges rule in his favour, he will get an appeal, a full appeal hearing on the appeal points that they're set to consider, which is whether he is entitled to freedom of expression or First Amendment rights if he is extradited, if he's entitled to those in the United States, because the prosecutors are actually arguing that he's not entitled to those because he's a foreign national. So on Monday, the High Court will decide whether that is a valid appeal point or whether he'll be extradited. So they could order his extradition and he could be put on a plane very quickly to the Eastern District of Virginia. So it's a very scary time for us, and for Julian, because this could be his last avenue in the UK courts.
Yes, this is the most important legal battle, and it's a fight for Julian's life. But it's the most important as well legal battle and determinant for free speech all across the world that I think any of us will ever see in our lives. And one of the other concerns that has been brought up and is being considered by the courts, from what I understand, is not just whether or not Julian will have First Amendment rights at this potential trial in the United States, but also whether or not they will guarantee that he will not face the death penalty. Now, could you provide us updates as to this matter and what the U.S. has said about it? And also, it's worth pointing out that it was Trump's former CIA director, Mike Pompeo himself, who planned multiple assassination attempts against Julian Assange. But about the promises being made or kept, what do you have to say?
Well, that's right. It's very unusual what's gone on in Julian's extradition. All the court proceedings are sort of setting these precedents along the way that have never been done before in the UK courts. So back in February, Julian had another application to appeal hearing, and the judges found that he did have these grounds of appeal, that they had worthy grounds of appeal in that that he should not face the death penalty if he is extradited, and he should have First Amendment rights. But what the courts actually did was, instead of granting an appeal, they gave the United States another chance to present more evidence, to present what we call diplomatic notes. So a note from the embassy, the US embassy in London, to address these appeal concerns. So the United States put forward these notes saying that they would not pursue the death penalty against Julian, and that Julian would be entitled to argue a First Amendment defense, but that ultimately was up to the judge. And we know that there's already a Supreme Court decision in the United States that says that the First Amendment can't be extended to foreign nationals. So really these diplomatic notes, it's like they're talking out the sides of their mouths, really, just trying to get him extradited, using this sort of evidence put forward from the US Embassy. But I think really what's important to note is that this legal proceeding, has been going on for 5 years now. And that's 5 years that Julian has been kept in a maximum security prison. He's not charged with any crime in the United Kingdom. He's not serving any sentence of any kind. And prosecutors have actually said that if he was, they said in court that if he was to receive, a sentence, it could be the amount of time he's served. So really, he shouldn't be in prison at all. He should be back with his family. And that's not even, addressing that what he actually did is what publishers and journalists, it's their bread and butter. It's what they do every day. They publish state secrets. They expose government wrongdoing. And any journalist who isn't doing that, aren't really doing their job. So I think it's really important that all your listeners know that Julian was just doing his job. Exposing these crimes, exposing state criminality, and that's why he's been pursued. And as you said before, the country that is actually trying to extradite him, under Mike Pompeo, who was then CIA director in 2017, he launched this fatwa against WikiLeaks. He used his first speech as CIA director to really come out hard and say that he was going to make it a priority to pursue WikiLeaks. That's where we really saw the ramping up of the persecution against Julian that eventually led to this prosecution. So you can draw direct links to those early speeches of Mike Pompeo and this indictment being brought by Jeff Sessions under the Trump administration. But it wasn't just that. There are reports from Yahoo News, a 10,000-word article that has been nominated for journalism prizes that cited 30 former and current intelligence community members in Washington, that within the Pompeo CIA, there were plots and sketches drawn up to assassinate Julian inside the embassy. There were plots to kidnap Julian from the Ecuadorian embassy, where he spent 7 years in London. And those plots to kidnap Julian made it as high as the Trump White House. And there were conversations that were reported on in this article that said in these discussions in the Trump White House that they were planning to kidnap Julian, that the DOJ and the Attorney General at the time said, wait till you get some charges in place, because if you kidnap him now, where are you going to take him? You can't put him in Guantanamo. Let's get some charges in place so that when you do eventually take him from the embassy, we can bring this indictment and start extradition proceedings. And so you can see this direct correlation between that 2017 speech by Mike Pompeo and the eventual indictment that we're seeing now, this judicial kidnapping, if you will, of the most famous publisher in the world.
Yes, 100% the most famous publisher and one of the biggest heroes in my life for everything that he has done in sacrifice in this fight, and what all of you have done in sacrifice in this fight for the truth. Earlier on, years ago, there were not many people in positions of power who were willing to call for the freedom of Julian Assange, and even less who would share the work of WikiLeaks and all the truth that they uncovered. But now we've seen some pretty amazing revelations. We've seen that the Prime Minister of Australia has come out and said, wrap up this case, close it down. We need Julian Assange back home. we saw that in the government, there was a vote of 86 to 42. Australian lawmakers on February 15th voted to, in effect, supports the effort to bring Julian home. We've also seen the ACLU, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the editors-in-chief of Washington Post and the New York Times all make the case for Julian Assange's freedom. So have these developments been, have they been, something that you think can, in effect, change the outcome of this case? I heard Julian's wife, Stella Assange, say earlier this week that she does not expect a rational outcome from the high courts, but is hoping that the judges do the right thing. Or do you think that all of these developments in the Australian government, in the media, and in these organizations in the U.S. are frankly too little, too late?
Yeah, look, Jackson, I think, right now we're at this point where Julian's closer to his freedom than he's ever been. Just last month, the President Joe Biden said he was considering Australia's request to drop the charges against Julian. So you've got at the highest levels of the US government now aware of Julian's case and considering these sort of requests from the Australian government. You've also got a resolution before the Congress, the resolution 934, that just keeps adding more and more co-sponsors from within the Congress from both sides of the aisle. I was in Washington a few weeks ago, and someone said to me, I think we're at the point that it's now based to support Julian Assange's freedom. So I think you're getting to this point where, there's so many people supporting Julian's freedom, and it's really seen as the just and the right thing to do. And it's really a litmus test, like people out there, if they don't support Julian's freedom, it actually says more about them than it does about Julian Assange. So I think we're at this point where the popular support for Julian's freedom is it's incredible. When I travel around the world, when Stella speaks, when my father speaks, we're always greeted by many people. The demand from the UK media actually to hear people from Julian's perspective around court dates and things like that is growing and growing and growing. So much so that we can't actually satisfy the demand for it, among Julian's spokespeople. So I think we really are reaching this moment in time where Julian's freedom is now a possibility, and we just need to keep pushing. And that's why it's so important that your listeners and your viewers come down to the Royal Courts of Justice on the 20th from 8:30. We'll be down there. There'll be a lot of speakers speaking there. My father and I will be there, as well as Stella, as well as Kristen Harrison from WikiLeaks. And it's so important to really show those Royal Courts of Justice the amount of support that Julian has. So come down on the 20th of May if you're in London, or if you can get a train into London or a bus. Please come down and show your support for Julian on that day.
Well, I wish I could be there with you. I'm in America right now, but I encourage everyone in our audience to make the trip, and please do attend that. It is imperative for the future of free speech, for Julian Assange's life, for his family. And I know that you have the full support of the host of this show that I'm filling in for, MP George Galloway. And, we all 100% support you, and you are 100% correct, Gabriel. It is a litmus test. I remember in January, first week of January, I think it was 2021, we had a group out protesting in front of the Department of Justice and also in front of the, I believe it was the vice president's home at the time. And it was freezing cold and the conditions were not great. But I can tell you the most interesting thing about those protests was we had people from all across the political spectrum who disagreed on 100 other issues, but were there because they support the freedom of Julian Assange. So, Gabriel, thank you so much for joining the show, and I wish you all the best of luck on Monday. Thank you.
Cheers, Jackson. Thank you.